Midaber Hashem Moshe b'midbar Sinai b'ol moed. Hashem had spoke to Moshe in the Sinai desert in the Ol Moed. Meaning after Sinai, all the communications which Hashem had with Moshe was from the Ol Moed. The Ramban earlier had explained that we find that the Ol Moed, the Mishkan, was a replication of Sinai. That just as we find Sinai, the Torah describes there was a fire with smoke billowing up to heaven. We find that the Mishkan, the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, was gold. Gold represents fire. The color of gold is reddish, it's fire. Just as the Mishkan was encircled with crushing, with vertical beams, Sinai was encircled with Klal Yisrael. So because the many settings which are the equivalent of Sinai, Sinai is replicate, the Mishkan is a replication of what? Of Sinai. So just as Sinai, Hashem had communicated to Moshe to give over to Klal Yisrael what the Torah is, identically, all the mitzvahs that were communicated to Moshe were in the Ol Moed. We had said earlier, in the beginning of Vayikra, that maybe when Hashem spoke to Moshe, the audibility of the sound was a normal level of audibility. No, it was the exact same level of audibility of Sinai. Just in Sinai, as it says, Kol Hashem, B'koach, Kol Hashem, B'moksh, Kol Hashem, Shovei HaRozim, the sound, the voice of Hashem smashes the cedars. It's with the same level of intensity. Identically, the communication to Moshe was what? With that same level of intensity. So we ask them, why are you speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu? The answer is that since the Ol Moed, the Mishkan was the replication of Sinai, and the Torah was given at that level of audibility, identically, the Mishkan, if we're communicating Torah, it has to be within that context of audibility. We explained that just as Moshe Rabbeinu himself was the equivalent of Klal Yisrael, because his neshama was the equivalent of Klal Yisrael's neshama. Identically, whenever Hashem speaks to Moshe, it's in that same context as he spoke to Klal Yisrael in Sinai. This is what we explained. So all that Hashem had spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu was B'ol Moed, Bechod LaChodesh Hasheni. On the first day of the second month, B'shana Hashenis, which is what? The first day of the year. Let's say some Me'eretz Mitzrayim Leimor. Rashi, B'toch libosa lefonav modosam kol shoah. To show the level of love that Hashem has for Klal Yisrael, he counts us continuously. When we left Egypt, he counted us. When we had the casualties as a result of the ego, what was the number of those who survived? The first day of Nisan, which was the second year, the Mishkan was erected, took on a permanent status, because for 7 days Moshe Rabbeinu would erect it and dismantle it. On the first day of Nisan of the second year, Aaron was installed as the Kohen Gadol and his children as the Kohanim, and Moshe Rabbeinu no longer officiated. A month later, he counts them. So it's Be'echod LaChodesh Hasheni B'shana Hashenis. The first day of the second month of the second year after we left Egypt. So firstly, I mean, we know we're in the Sinai desert. Why is it important for us to know that Hashem spoke to Moshe b'midbar Sinai? We know there was Har Sinai. We haven't entered into Canaan yet. So it's midbar Sinai. Why is that important for the Torah to tell us the location in which we find ourselves? It's midbar Sinai. So here the Balaturim writes, Le'el minei ksiv ela mitzvahs v'sobach midbar Sinai. The Vayikra ends, these are the mitzvahs, these are the chukim, these are the mishpatim, which Moshe Rabbeinu had communicated to Klal Yisrael. And then it begins, midbar Sinai, Loma im ein od meisem atzmo kemidbar, and yochel the Torah mitzvahs. Unless a person allows himself to be negated like the desert has no identity. It's total desolation. So just as the desert itself has no identity in terms of anything special, identically, a person who negates himself like the desert, he's able to engage and comprehend Torah and mitzvahs. Okay? That's why the Torah is telling us the location. Just as the desert doesn't have any innate value because it's total desolation, a person has to negate himself that he should be the repository or be the location to merit the siyata d'shmaya. He has to be similar to the desert. The Gemara tells us in Tainus that Torah is likened to three liquids or beverages: mayim, yayin, v'cholov. It has a certain characteristic of water. What's the characteristic of water? And the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah cites this Gemara that just as water is holech mimokum madro lemokum nomuch, just as water flows from a high elevation to a low elevation, from a high location to a low location, identically, Eina Torah miskayemes el mi she daitu shvelo. The Torah could only be retained in a person who has a humble spirit. Just as water flows to a low location, identically, Torah could only be contained in such a person. Just as wine, the Gemara explains, has to be stored in an earthen cask because earth itself absorbs, it gives nothing of itself. Identically, you have to have humility. And just as cholov, milk, if you have any level of uncleanliness, falls into it, it becomes not drinkable. You can't drink it, it spoils. Identically, if you have any degree of impurity in Torah, the Torah no longer functions and is not effective as it's meant to be. This is the reason why it's compared to these three beverages or liquids. So midbar sina oisis atzmo kemidbar. If a person behaves and conducts himself kemidbar, then he has relevance to Torah mitzvahs. That's the ultimate. Just thinking, in life, the Gemara tells us that a person cannot testify on his own behalf. Why can't he testify on his own behalf? Because Adam Koravetz et Latzmo. There's nobody closest to a person than himself. Just as a Korov, a relative, cannot testify on behalf of a relative, identically, a person cannot testify on his own behalf because there's nobody closest to a person than the person himself. Because of that level of closeness, we always have conflicts of interest. And the conflicts of interest cause that we are the priority. There's always somehow we are the priority. Now, a person naturally doesn't do Torah mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs is not material. It's not a material endeavor. So if that is the case, why do you do Torah mitzvahs? Either you don't do it, because there's always a conflict, or if you do it shlo lishma. There has to be some personal benefit. And what is that personal benefit? Material benefit. So the only way you value that spiritual benefit, where you don't have that hook in it, which is your shlo lishma, that's only if you negate it. If you negate it, then we talk about Hashem and not yourself. We'd have to come on to Mitoch Shlo Lishmo B'Lishmo. That if you do something with an ulterior motive, ultimately, you have a potential to come to Lishmo to do it for the right reason. So I'm saying, so midbar, the concept of midbar is so essential that the more a person negates himself and you see beyond yourself, then you have relevance to do the mitzvahs as they should be done. That's what the Torah is pointing out over here. We find that Avram Avinu was the first human being to recognize Hashem. Versus in brachos, he's the first one to acknowledge Hashem as Odon, as master. Was Avram Avinu the most brilliant human being who walked the face of the earth, that he came upon God's existence and nobody else was able to come upon this? I mean, what did Avram have which other people didn't have? Chazal tell us that Avram was the second most humble person who ever lived. Because we find that when he had heard that Sodom was to be destroyed and he entered into this dialogue with Hashem and he started to speak maybe too directly, he says to Hashem, Anochi Ofav Efer. I am dust, I am ash, which is an expression of humility. What he was saying, that if Hashem wouldn't have saved him in the past, he'd be dust when he went to war against the four kings. He'd decompose and turn back to dust. And if he wouldn't have been taken out and killed by Hashem, he'd be ash, he would have been incinerated. Anochi Ofav Efer. He did not attribute it to himself. That he was worthy. It's all Hashem's beneficence, why he survived, why he was victorious, and why he came out of the kivsha, out of the kiln. But that's humility. Humility automatic, that's a negation of oneself. Because he negated himself, what's the difference between idolatry and monotheism? What's the difference? The Gemara tells us in the Avodah Zarah that a non-Jew has a statue which he worships. It's called Avodah Zarah. A Jew is not permitted to benefit from it. Something that was worshipped is off limits. One's not permitted to benefit from it. What happens if the non-Jew goes and breaks it? Breaks its arm, breaks off its head, its legs. It reverts back to an ordinary status. Why? So the Gemara says because that's called bittul avodah zarah. The non-Jew, he negated it. So when does the non-Jew break the idol? He hears, if you want to succeed, you worship this deity. He worships the deity, which is the ultimate in terms of reverence and respect and worship. And then he sees the deity doesn't somehow respond to his supplication. So what does he do? He breaks it. He's disappointed, he breaks it. So what does he do? He looks for another deity. So every avodah zarah, every idolatry is where does it emanate from? Because he believes that this is in his best interest. If it doesn't play out the way he thought it'd play out, he breaks it. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not that we chose. It's not pick and choose with Hashem. We realized who Hashem was, and he says, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. You take it, the world continues. You leave it, the world reverts back to pre-existence. That's what it was. So with us, there's no such thing as we pick and choose. I mean, you have the hero. That's the whole objective of life. There's choice. That's where our actions have value. But in terms of bottom line, there's only one way. One way, it's monotheism, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing else. As a result of that, what is crucial, but the essence of a human being is the ego. Ego is, I always have to have some benefit. So unless you recognize that it's all Hashem, you always have your hand in the till. That's the Shlo Shema. We read on the Haftorah on Tisha B'Av, Al Yishalel Chochem B'Chochmoso, Al Yishalel Gibel Gvuroso. A wise man should not pride himself in his wisdom. A strong man should not pride himself in his strength. A rich man shouldn't pride himself in what? In his wealth. Why? Because whatever you have, that's an endowment. What should you pride yourself? In your dosi. That you know me, you acknowledge me, and you dedicate yourself to me, that you have a right to pride yourself. Why? Because that's the Gemara. Every aspect of our lives is predestined, except tzaddik v'rosha, your spiritual standing. That's not predestined. That's up to every one of us. But what's that based upon? If you succeed or fail, what's your degree of negation? To what degree do you value God? But whatever Hashem wants is going against the grain. Because every bechira, the reason why it's choice is because you have to somehow take control. We had said, and I asked the question, Pesach time, the Ashkenaz Gedolah, they offered the Shmon Esrei and all the tefillah. They picked it, which psuk we say psuki de Zimra, Birkas Kriya Shema, the Shmon Esrei, tefillah on Shabbos, Yom Tov, all the text, the terminology, the psukim, they're the ones who put it all together. They constructed it. So on Pesach, what do we say? Pesach is referred to, as the Torah says, Chag HaMatzos. We say, this is Chag HaMatzos, that's an assertion, Zman Cheruseinu. It's the time of Cheruseinu, of our freedom. So the question is, why didn't they use the term Zman Gulaseinu? It's the time of our redemption. Gula Seinu is also redemption, freedom. Cherus is freedom. Gula is redemption. So why did they choose the term Cherus rather than Gula Seinu Gula? Okay. Now we read in this coming week's Pirkei Avos. It says in the Torah that the luchos, the Aseres Adibros, the 10 Commandments were chorus ala luchos. What does chorus mean? They were engraved. They were etched into the stone. The letters of cherus and chorus are the same letters, except the vowels. If the vowels are as cherus reads, it's cherus. But if you take away the vowels, you put a komatz there and a shuruk, it's chorus. So whether it's a komatz or a tzerei, depends on it's cherus or chorus. So what does the Mishnah tell us? What is the Torah telling us by, it's the same letters? Eilucha ben chorin, elamisha osi b'talmud Torah. Who's truly the free man? Only the one engaged in Torah study. That's only then are you a free man. What does that mean? That the only way a person, this is the concept of the Gemara tells us 2 locations, Barasi Yitzhak, Barasi Torah Tavli. Hashem says, I've created an evil inclination. The only antidote to somehow incapacitate it is only the study of Torah. That's the only way you could only approach it. So we say there's an expression, a person is a slave of his desires, So how do you somehow break through that? How do you take control of your life? You have to spiritualize yourself. What's this spiritualization? Through which mechanism does it come? That's the study of Torah. So when we left Egypt, you say, we're free. Before we avdi paro, Hashem freed us. What is the objective of that freedom? Zman cheruseinu. It's the time of cherus. The letter, if we would have said gulo, we're free. But cherus, what does it indicate? It indicates chorus. The cherus indicates are the same letters as chorus. The objective of leaving Egypt was to come to Sinai. Chorus ala luchos, the 10 Commandments, that's what it was. So this is the midbar. But the only reason why we say Nasiv and Nishma is we totally negated ourselves. We didn't ask what's it all about. We embraced it because we recognized the will of Hashem is the ultimate. As the Navi says, the rich man shouldn't pride himself in his wealth, the strong man in his strength, the wealth man in his wealth, and the wise man in his wisdom. What should you pride yourself? Your do'osi. Because that's Bechira. That's not predestined. Avram Avinu, because he had that attribute or that quality, that characteristic of humility, therefore he could see beyond the forest. He could see the reality because he didn't have that self-interest, which I pick and choose. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, Adam Rishon, if you'd be living in Gan Eden, and the evil inclinations outside of yourself, and God tells you could eat from any tree of the garden except one tree not, Eitz Hadas, of course it's Tov v'Ra, and you have a level of clarity, one of a level of clarity, because you're the handiwork of God. So how do you go for whatever reason? How do you go against God's commandment, God's dicta? How do you do it? So the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, when he ate of Eitz Hadas min hoyo, at that moment he was a heretic. He denied the existence of God. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to eat of the tree of knowledge. If you sense Hashem's presence and you internalize it at that moment, how do you eat it? The answer is, at that moment, he denied his existence. At that moment, like he blocked it out. And he blocked it out. Therefore, he was able to what? To cross that line, to eat of the tree of knowledge. What does that mean? What is the essence of a human being? The Mishnah tells us in Sanhedrin, of all the species, the only species that was created as a single person, a single of that, it wasn't with a pair, was the human being. Every other living species had a counterpart, a male, a female. Adam initially was only created as a male. Hashem says, it's not good for man to be by himself. I will create a helper, which is the woman. Should have created it right away. Why did he wait? First he created Adam by himself, and then he created Chava. Lama nivra Adam yechidi. So the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, because a person, when he says to say, B'shvili nivra olam, the world was created for me. I have control. Hashem has given me the ability to control this world. B'shvili nivra olam. The two sides of that equation. Either b'shvili nivra olam. That tells me what is the extent of the task. It's so enormous. I need a whole world to accommodate to be able to meet that objective. Or no, b'shvili nivra olam. The world is mine. I do with it as I please. Either it's an ego inflator, or it's so overwhelming to tell you to what degree you respond. The objective is so broad and deep. You need a whole world to address it, which is humbling. Adam, he took the other side. I'm the master. Hashem is the master in heaven. I'm the master over the terrestrial. So it was the ego. When he gives him the wife and the wife feeds him, what did he say to Hashem? He was an ingrate. He blamed God for giving him the wife. Because if he wouldn't give me the wife, I wouldn't have eaten. I mean, is that what the way you express it? You point the accusing finger at somebody else rather than recognize it's yourself. So again, there's the ego. And that's what it's all about. So to have the relationship with Hashem, the Midbar Sinai, you have to negate yourself like a midbar. It has no identity. It's desolation. The more you're desolate, the more your ego is minimized, the greater capacity you have to be able to be the repository and the processing center to process that spiritual entity, which is called Torah, and have a relationship with Hashem. שתהיה השגחוסו חזקו ושתדלוסו גדולו, לקיים מה שחייבו בו הבורא מעבודתו. A person has to be vigilant and diligent to fulfill and take the initiative to fulfill his obligation to his creator in their service. Lasos mitzvosov, lizor me'asher hisiru mimenu, and to be careful, all that you've been commanded. K'fi mashu mevakesh shi'abore maskim lo b'mashu boteach olav bo. In all areas that his creator should be satisfied in all the areas that he relies on him. Says in Pirkei Avos, Aseh ritzono ki ritzonecho. His will should be oil. If you want to do his will, if your will is you're on his page, then ritzoncha, he will that your ratzon is his ratzon. If you're towing the line the way you're supposed to tow the line, he'll help you tow the line. He'll back you, he'll support you. But if you're doing your own thing, it's not going to happen. Negate your will for his will. So you should negate other people's will for your will. What is it all about? I once said, what is this analogous to? A person goes, he starts a fund, and he has a tremendous track record to succeed in his investments. People give him fortune money. So he tells his investors, it's going to take a few months before the fund starts making money because, I have to fix up an office, and I have to this, I have to that. And after I set the office, I have to travel a little bit. And about half a year after you give me the money, start investing, and we'll see some returns. 6 months later, the people call him, his investors say, so we're holding? He says, I think I'm about to start. Okay. They call him 3 months later, how's it going? Well, I felt I had to take a little bit more vacation. Then, a little bit later, he says, my interior decorator said I have to do something more before I meet clients. By the time the year was up, he already spent a certain significant amount of the money that the investors gave him. So the investors say to me, something, the money we gave you was to make money for us. But we see that a significant amount of the money you use it for yourself. We're not on the same page. You're supposed to be working for us. We're not underwriting whatever you're about. You get a percentage of the profits, but we're not underwriting you. Hashem says the same thing. Your will should be his will. And if your will is his will, then his will be your will. Negate your will for his will. Because that's the ego. So Hashem should negate others' will for your will. Because bottom line, since your will is my will, therefore I'm backing all the way regardless of where you're at in life. That's the concept. Have trust in Hashem. If you have trust in Hashem, there's no reason why your will shouldn't be his will. Because you're always going to succeed if you understand it correctly. Dwell in the land and shepherd emunah, meaning keep cultivating emunah, the faith. God is great to those who hope for him, to the soul that seeks him. And that's what it's all about. There's a story many years ago, stand with the story. Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zech Tzaddik Bracha, had a son-in-law. His name was Rav Moshe Elioshiskal. He was a very holy man. I knew him personally. My father, Allah Hashem, was very close with him. He was a tzaddik. And he was a genius. Great, tremendous Talmid Chacham. He was a Shiva Torah V'das. And himself, he had a shul on the Lower East Side. He had no money. Why was he a rabbi of the shul or rav of the shul? Because it was his father's shul. And he was a Shiva when his father passed away already. And he felt, out of respect, he'll take over the shul. And the shul, the median age was 70 and above. And old people were poor people. Couldn't afford to keep the shul. But whatever he could do, he maintained the shul. Okay? He was a holy man. Not to be believed. If you'd meet him, you'd think you're talking to somebody at Nilo on your kippur. That's the way he carried himself. And I remember one day, a certain Hasidic older person came to the shul, and of course he honored him. He should sit up front. So he was to one side of the Amud, this person was the other side of the Amud. And Lithuanian people, when they daven, they don't wear a gartel. They don't wear a special belt they put on for tefillah. This Hasidic rabbi comes, and he's not the rabbi of the shul. He tells the people, if they want to go to the Amud, then put on a gartel. The people were upset. They go to Rav Shishgal, and they said, look, he's not the rabbi of the shul. Well, so why is he dictating? He says, let the man be. Just let him be. All of a sudden, people start giving money to this rabbi, to this older man. Yeah, the shul, Rabbi Shishgal can't make ends meet to maintain the shul. And people now, all of a sudden, they're giving money to him. People ready, they couldn't deal with him anymore. So they go to Rav Shishgal, he says, what's going to be? How do you tolerate this? He says, it's okay, don't worry about it. 2 months later, what happens? This older rabbi is no longer alive. All of a sudden, suddenly, passes away. That's the way it is. He had a level of humility not to be believed. Not to be believed. I mean, how does this not ruffle your feathers? Man comes and he's literally stepping on you. It's okay. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And that's why he lived his life. If your will is his will be your will. And he'll negate, if you negate your will for his will, he'll negate other people's will to do your will. To be continued.